Back when you were a kid, what did everyone call the drink you would make at McDonald's when you'd mix together every single type of soda? For me, it was a graveyard, and today's build is dedicated to that finest of drinks that only the Sigmaist of Chads dare to indulge in. So if you want to stick it to the normies that drink plain Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper, this may just be the off-meta build for your spare Necromancer to run daily random normals with. It's also fun to play. Quick note before we begin, this build is just a fun, off-meta build for shits and giggles. It's not meant to be the absolute best build ever conceived by humanity, but rather it's meant to be fun, so keep that in mind as we continue. Right, so we're playing around on a Magicka Necromancer with 1 bar as usual. We won't be spamming heavy attacks this time around, but instead we're going to go fully into skeleton mode and see if we can mix up a concoction that includes all of the different damage types. We'll start out with fashion today, and we only need 1 word, and that word is skeleton. I'm playing as an orc at the moment, but you could also go as a high elf or a dark elf, one of the beast races, or Breton. Pretty much anything that's critical or magicka based would work well here. Place all of your attribute points into Magicka, and then take the thief as your mundus. You have a few options for food, so you can just use Witch Mother's Potent Brew like I am here. You could use Longfin Pasty, Bewitched Sugar Skulls, or Clockwork Citrus Fillet. Just go with whatever you need, depending on the sweat level of the content you'll be running and how well you can sustain. For potions, you can use Tripots. You could use Essence of Spell Power or Alliance Spell Droughts, or even just Magicka potions if you must. So just like with food, pick your potions based on the sweat level of the content you're running, or just based on what you already have on hand. We're going pretty far off meta with these 2 gear sets, but we're going for max chaos. We're going to be using Mad Tinkerer along with Griffin's Reprisal. Mad Tinkerer is a light set obtained from the Overland in Clockwork City, so you can also purchase these from the Guild Trader if you don't have access to that DLC. This set gives us some extra critical chance, some spell damage, and when we deal damage we'll summon a Verminous Fabricant that charges the nearest enemy, dealing shock damage to everything in its path, knocking them into the air, and stunning them. This is a pretty crazy set, and I think it fits well with the theme of mixing as many crazy things together as we can. We're going to be wearing Mad Tinkerer on our shoulders, our arms, our legs, and a belt and shoes. We'll want all of these pieces to be divines with max Magicka glyphs. And if you hate this set and want to use something else, or if you want to go with a more meta setup, I would swap this set out for Perfected Whirl of the Depths from the Dreadsail Reef Trial on Veteran mode, or just the normal version of the set from the normal difficulty mode. Our other set, Griffin's Reprisal, is a medium set, looted from the Coral Airy dungeon in the Ascending Tide DLC. This one gives us some critical chance, some penetration, and when we deal critical damage, ourselves or an ally can activate the Griffin's Reprisal synergy on the enemy within 8 seconds to cause a griffin to fly by and deal bleed damage over 10 seconds. This one will be slotted on our chest, also in Divines with a max Magicka glyph. We'll want both a ring and a necklace, both bloodthirsty with spell damage glyphs, and then an Inferno Staff with a poison glyph. If you hate using an Inferno Staff, you can use a Lightning Staff instead, and I wouldn't put it past you since the heavies are so much easier to channel. If you don't want to use this set, the best alternative would be Pillar of Nirn from the Falkreath Hold DLC dungeon. It'll do slightly less bleed damage, but there isn't a synergy involved, making it more passive. But you won't have the super ridiculous griffin screeching every time you or one of your team members uses that synergy, so keep that in mind when you're getting set up. As always, our mythic is going to be the Oakensoul Ring in Bloodthirsty with a spell damage glyph, and then our monster piece will be a light Slimecraw's Guise. You can pick up this helmet as a drop in the Veteran Wayrest Sewers dungeon. I like to mention 2 things during every build video, in case this is the first of my videos that you're watching, so I'll mention them here. First of all, as you can see, my gear isn't fully upgraded all the way to gold, and my jewelry is still blue. In a perfect world, this would all be fully upgraded to yellow, but since that's not the case, we're rocking with the unupgraded gear pieces. This is totally fine and not the end of the world, so if you find yourself lacking the funds to upgrade your stuff all the way, don't think that you need to wait to play the game. So get out there and start raising some skeletons and blasting fools with all of your damage types. You'll notice improvements as you do get everything upgraded, but the difference isn't going to kill you. And real quick, the other thing I like to mention is that there are many roads that lead to high DPS. I often get comments from disgruntled Redditors and trial dummy humpers telling me to change X, Y, and Z in my setup to meet their own arbitrary standards. Sure, there probably is a very short list of the very best gear sets, the best skills to slot, and all of that. But again, this is a fun build that I came up with myself after extensive testing and hours spent working. Please feel free to make any changes to this and think of it as a skeleton for your own creativity, no pun intended. I don't want anyone thinking that I see my setups as the end-all be-all to any given playstyle, and that's why I like to mention alternative sets and skills in most of my videos, because I know there are many different ways to achieve the same goal, and no one is necessarily better than the others. So if there's a gear set or a skill that I don't mention in a build, you absolutely should test it out, and you don't have to get my permission to do so. Alright, moving right along to our champion points, we're going to slot whatever the hell we want in green. I always like to use Warmount, Gifted Rider, Steed's Blessing, and Rationer, but do what you'd like here. In the blue section, we're going to go with Master at Arms, Biting Aura, Wrathful Strikes, and Occult Overload. The first three will just be buffing up our damage from different sources, and then Occult Overload will provide us with some Oblivion damage when we finish off an enemy that's under the effect of a status effect, which most of them will be. So they will explode and do Oblivion damage to everything around them. If you don't actually care about getting all of these damage sources, this could be swapped out for maybe Backstabber or Reaving Blows, Fighting Finesse, or whatever else you'd like instead. In the red section, we're going with Boundless Vitality, Celerity, Fortified, and Siphoning spells. This is a pretty normal setup, but you could always swap things around if you prefer something else here instead. For passive abilities, you'll want to be sure, as always, to get your racials, anything you need from the guilds, crafting, and Alliance War, everything from Destruction Staff, everything from Gravelord. You'll want to unlock Last Gasp from Bone Tyrant, and from Living Death you'll want to be sure to unlock Corpse Consumption and Undead Confederate. And since we're using light and medium, be sure to grab the passives from those two armor skill lines. Our bar of skills is going to be entirely made up of Gravelord spells. So first we have Skeletal Arcanist. This guy does some passive damage and provides us with a corpse. We're also going to be using Stalking Blastbones, which acts as a little bomber and provides us with yet another dead skeleton. Our main spammable is going to be Ricochet Skull, so every third cast it will do more damage and bounce off of additional enemies. We're also going to be using Unnerving Boneyard as a source of major breach, as well as some damage over time. And if we use this on a skeleton corpse, we'll do even more damage, so keep that in mind. And then our last skill will be Detonating Siphon, which we can use as a damage over time spell that damages everything between ourselves and the corpse we start to suck on. Our ultimate is going to be the Glacial Colossus. This stinky boy debuffs the enemy and does some decent damage in the form of frost damage. So to go over the sources of our damage types again, we'll make a quick list of the different damage types that exist. Physical damage includes poison, disease, and bleed. We get the poison damage from our glyph that's on our Inferno staff. We get disease from Detonating Siphon, and we get bleed from our Griffin. The magic damage types are Flame, Frost, Shock, and Oblivion. Some people would say Oblivion doesn't really count as a damage type since it's basically just basic magic damage that can't be blocked or reflected, but I say it is because I said so. We'll be getting our flame damage from Blast Bones and Ricochet. Frost damage will come from Unnerving Boneyard as well as our Glacial Colossus. And then we'll get shock damage from our Skeletal Arcanist and Mad Tinkerer. And finally, Oblivion damage will come from our champion ability, Occult Overload. So our rotation will basically include keeping up our Arcanist and keeping an eye on the corpse, casting Blast Bones from a distance when we're entering into battle, debuffing and damaging enemies over time with our Boneyard, and then sucking on corpses with our Siphon. In between all of this, we'll be spamming skulls with some light attacks weaved in, It's pretty simple, and the Arcanist helps keep it even more simple, and the most difficult thing we'll find here is making sure that we remember to cast our Boneyard on corpses to get the damage buff, and to make sure we keep everything up. You may find yourself struggling with Magicka sustain, so be sure to weave in heavy attacks when you find yourself getting low, and your never-ending supply of Ricochet Skulls will be waiting for you when you're topped back up. As always, I've stitched on some footage from a random dungeon that I ran earlier so you can see what the build looks like in action. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like the video and sub to the channel if you enjoyed. Until next time.
Taste my salted steel. Nothing of the sort. Time to die.